Good morning, guys.
Good morning, how are you?
Fine, and you?
Thank you, very good.
Today I would like to discuss about the beer, and I would like to know what does mean a beer to you?
Okay, well, first of all, I like beer, like many people, I guess, in this country and everywhere. I like beer, and I do drink beer, not that regularly. For me personally, as an individual, beer is something that I enjoy occasionally and usually with someone else. I very rarely open a beer by myself. So I like to drink beer with other people. I like to sit down, I like to have a beer, and it's like sharing a moment with another person. I like all sorts of beers, although I prefer lager to bitter or ale, which are the sort of darker beers, so I prefer paler beers. I guess that's because, coming from France, that's the kind of beers that I got used to drinking when I first started drinking, obviously at a very reasonable age. But I do love beer, and I find that for people who do like beer, living in Britain is certainly a good place to be, because a lot of people appreciate beer, but they appreciate beer in a way which is very different from people on the continent. So for instance, people who go to the pub here, they will go specifically to drink beer, particularly men, but increasingly women as well.
Yeah.
I think historically beer used to be the drink of men, really, and women would stick to other forms of beverages and alcohol, but it's become much more, obviously, much more common for women to drink beer and men to drink wine and all that kind of stuff. But people do now go to the pub, and the sort of usual beverage to order in the pub is beer. That tends to be the classic, and very few people, although increasingly things change, but very few people would go to the pub and think of another drink than beer if they were going to go for an alcoholic drink. What sort of beer do I drink in the pub, and do people drink in general? I like all sorts of beers, and there's a lot more, I find, in pubs these days, a lot more sort of continental Italian beers and French beers and Danish beers, and I quite like that, because it's a nice multicultural touch and trying new beers, and I like the pint. I like the idea of that big glass, that big manly glass that you hold in one hand. If you're quite small like me, two hands, and I like that. There's something about the pint that's pleasing, and it feels like a real proper drink. And also, I think because of the size of the drink, which I know, being French, when I first came here, was almost a little bit daunting. When you see people drinking several pints, you think, will I ever be able to do that? Turns out I can. But basically, I like the idea of having this big beer and then you sip it, and you don't have to necessarily down it. You just sip it, but it feels like a nice amount of drink to have, and it feels like the evening can last a bit longer because you've got that big amount of beer just for you. So I like the whole pint thing, and obviously pubs are almost a setup for beer drinkers. I mean, pubs are an extension of people's lounge in Britain. So the same way as people in France would have an aperitif, and they would sit around the table, and and they would make it last because they would have a good time. Easily, people here would meet in the pub and do exactly the same thing. It's kind of the British aperitif, if you want. I like it, and pubs are set up to make you feel at home. It's dark, it's got wood, it's got ornaments, it smells a certain smell, and it has that feel about it of going out, but going out and feeling at home at the same time. And I think it's a totally unique experience, and something that obviously resonates with many people, even abroad. I think it's a completely to me, it's an amazing cultural experience. Even now that I've been going to many different pubs, and I still feel that there's that kind of, it's a bit of a special place to be. So yeah. So
did you drink also a Trappist beer?
I used to in France I used to drink more Belgian beers, less so here.
Yeah.
But I really love them. But you cannot, I don't think you can drink Trappist beer or Belgian beers the same way as you drink more watered down versions of British beers. I mean, if you drink a pint of Leffe, for instance, or a pint of any Belgian beers, you know, it is quite strong and it's quite heavy to drink, and it just doesn't really fit the same kind of drinking culture. But I do think that there's definitely a place for Belgian beers, and I think as pubs become more multicultural, as they're becoming more continental in their approach, serving more food, etc., I think then this kind of drinking experience, which is different from the English beer drinking experience, has its place as well. I think you find that in London. There's quite a lot of places that serve now Belgian beers, and in other big cities in the UK. But I do think that it's an interesting and underdeveloped business, if you want, in the UK. And because people love beer so much, you've almost got your fan base already. You've got all the people that will enjoy it, but it's just that it hasn't quite crossed over yet. But I think it will at some point. And I think that there's definitely future for Trappist beers, and I love them, but I just wouldn't drink them the same way as I would drink 3 pints of Carlsberg.
What do you like when you drink a beer?
Drinking beer is like drinking wine in a way. There's a ritual. There's before, during, and after, right? Okay. So let's start with before. So you order your beer. If someone pours it for you, in a way, it's part of the experience as well. Someone pours it for you in the pub. It's nice. You see the beer going up, you know, just the right amount of head, and it almost makes your mouth water because you think, oh yeah, I could really fancy a beer. And I fancied a beer, but now I fancy even more because I can see it being poured in front of me. If you pour it yourself, I think, to me, it's even more of an experience because you know you've got that pleasure of sort of pouring it into your own glass and the sound that it makes and the bubbles and the color of it and the smell of it. So that's the prior to drinking it experience. And I think there's like all novel drinks in a way. You know, there's a whole sort of preliminary stage before you enjoy it. You know, there's something about it before you even put it into your mouth. And then obviously I like the taste, and the smell and the whole experience of drinking it, and obviously, you know, to be totally honest, I quite like the effect that beer has on me. I'm not saying I'm not an alcoholic, right? But yeah, you know, a few glasses maybe, but you know, it just makes you feel nice and warm, and it makes you feel, if you're with the right people, again, if you're with, you know, the right crowd and you're having a good time, then having a beer almost enhances the experience. It makes it even more special. I think if you were to sit in a pub with your friends, having a great time and pouring yourself a glass of tap water, that would not quite have the same, do you know what I mean? The same sort of festive spirit about it, and yeah, we're great, you know, we're meeting and we're doing something together. So that's the 3 important stages of beer drinking. Obviously, don't overdo it because otherwise you will be sick. Okay. Next question.
How many times per week did you organize this kind of event with your wife or with your friends?
To drink beer. Yeah. We never ever drink beer at home together. Well, no, we do occasionally, but it's very rare that we open a beer together at home. We're very more likely to open a bottle of wine, which I think is quite common in Britain, that people drink wine at home, they drink beer in the pub. Yeah, it's 2 separate kind of things. But I mean, I've got male friends that enjoy having a beer every evening, you know, at home and whatever. But for us, it's never been. We don't drink beer together. We don't appreciate beer together. But we do appreciate wine together, you know. Yeah. So maybe, I don't know, once a month, maybe. Okay. Not very often at all. Sorry to disappoint you.
It's not a problem.
Do you want me to say something else? Something different.
Okay. No, nice.
Mhm.
Thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ah.